Hi, welcome to Switching Mindsets. I'm speaking to Upasana Sarraju, the author of the super interesting book, The Ig Nobel Prizes and the Science That Refuses to Behave, published by Penguin Random House India. Hi, Upasana, or Sana, we can call you. You prefer that? Yeah.
Upasana is fine. Sana is mostly for people who struggle with saying Upasana.
Yeah. For people in India, Upasana is fine. Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah. Okay. So tell me, firstly, I was just telling you that I've gone through the book and now I want to deep dive into all these, what do you call it, weird, odd research, which is somehow once you read about it, it feels very meaningful, right? Okay, yes, of course, this is important stuff. And it also makes me realize that scientists are fun people. Yeah, like you've written in your book. So tell me what prompted the book, first of all.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a really difficult question to kind of answer for me because there's always been this love for science and ideas throughout. But it's when I encountered something called the Ig Nobel Prizes, as I detail in the introduction exactly how all of that happened. I realized just as you realized through the book that there is this entire world out there that is about science, that's about serious nerdy things, and for some reason there's Nobel laureates involved. I have no idea why, and why am I only just now finding about it? And there was this added feeling of a kinship because somebody else is out there being weird and interested in weird things, and they're putting their entire time and money and energy into it. So now I have an example to believe in, to look up to, as to how one can truly make one's life about what one is genuinely, naturally, organically excited by. When I got a chance to write the book after being awarded the first India Science Book Fellowship, I knew immediately that there are millions of people out there who haven't heard of the Ig Nobel Prizes and who, like me, might be just a little bit weird and are looking to belong to some institution or some school of thinking. And I also want to emphasize that many Indians have won the Ig Nobel Prizes. So I knew this was something very urgent, important, and exciting that had to be out there. And I spent about a year or so on the book, and it just happened.
Yeah, on the book, and I heard that you were in touch with Marc Abrahams for almost 5 years.
Yes, Marc
Yeah,
Abrahams is the person who founded the Ig Nobel Prizes.
yeah.
And I first, quote unquote, interviewed him as a student of science writing because I wanted to use an assignment we received in a graduate course as an excuse to talk to someone I really wanted to talk to but didn't have the courage to otherwise. So I took this assignment as permission to write to Mark Abrams and say, could I please interview you for a silly little homework assignment? That went on for an hour. And I knew there was something there. I wouldn't necessarily call it a connection, but I knew that um, this was a person I have to keep coming back to learn from. Um, so again, after a couple of years, I wanted to expand on that piece of homework to turn it into an article, which was published in the university magazine. So that became my excuse to do a second interview. When the book happened, many more excuses came to initiate conversations with him, and I now see him as some sort of a one-sided um, tutor or mentor or guide, simply because of the way he looks at things. And because of speaking to him so closely and annoying him with a lot of questions, I got to get a lot of stories and interesting facts out that have gone into the book, making it sort of the first time many of these stories have been told. And it's been such a privilege.
Yeah, I can imagine because he sounds like a legend to me now. Just going through the initial parts of your book, like you
Mm,
mentioned his podcast, I think the Improbable Research podcast, right? That's what it's
right,
called. Yeah.
right.
So his own story is so interesting that he found this magazine because he wanted to belong somewhere, like you said, and he found this magazine which nobody was bothered about, and then he wanted to buy it, and they wouldn't let him buy it. And then he started the Ig Nobel Awards. It's really really great, really. So I'm just mentioning all of this if people want to go deep diving and
Yeah,
reading more
yeah.
on this. Yeah. So I'm just wondering where to start. So let's start with the cover. The cover, your
Mm,
cover itself has a lot of stuff. So yeah.
yes.
So tell me about the cover. Should I ask, or do you want to just get started? You know best.
Oh, I
Yeah.
would love to. I'm interested in the questions you would have after observing the cover, especially as someone who's not coming
Okay.
from science.
Okay.
So please ask
Yeah.
away.
Yeah. So first thing is about the cow.
The cow.
Yeah.
There
Yeah.
is a cow with zebra stripes on the cover, and this cow is in the spotlight on the cover because some it's not just some artist dreamt up this unholy fusion of a cow and a zebra, but there was an actual scientific study um, which won an Ig Nobel Prize in 2025. And this study wanted to test whether cows, when painted in black and white stripes, were bitten by fewer insects or bitten less by insects that typically bother a lot of cows. And this built from a previous study that compared white cows versus black cows or differently toned cows for how much they attract insects. Just as mosquitoes bother us, there are a lot of other kinds of flies that bother cows. And so this study is so captivating because the image of a cow with black and white stripes is something you can't get out of your head. And I figured this has to represent the book. And also it's a very recent Ig Nobel Prize. So um, we decided that this must be the focus.
Yeah, maybe, we should use, and apparently it works, right? Because the stripes, I'm just reading from from a website on this, on your website. It says the
Yeah.
stripes appear to interfere with the fly's ability to execute a controlled landing. That's
Yes.
amazing.
Yes. Can you, I mean, first of all, to think that even these bothersome little flies have such sophisticated mechanisms.
Yeah,
And to find that someone actually looked into what affects their ability to land on the skin of cows.
yeah. And you said,
Why? Yeah.
yeah, it's crazy. And you said, mosquitoes, maybe we should also paint ourselves something. Someone should do a research on that.
Someone should, just as this is something that comes up a lot because there is this idea that people of different blood groups attract mosquitoes
Yeah,
differently,
yeah, yeah, that's
and
true.
people of certain kind of sweat attract mosquitoes differently. So
Yeah.
we have to use this to our
Yeah, but if we
advantage.
could just use
Absolutely
body
right.
paint at night or something while sleeping, that
Yeah.
would be quite nice. Paint ourselves like zebras or something like that.
Yes.
That might be a good business idea there, somewhere.
I am making a note because being an author doesn't pay very well. I'm
Yeah,
planning all of this. Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
and
absolutely.
there are other Ig Nobel winning studies referenced on the cover,
Yeah,
which look equally interesting. There's a banana peel for some reason. There's a slice of pizza,
yeah,
and I would love for people to, when they pick up the book, read the little page at the very end that explains the cover a little. And
yeah.
if they find it interesting, read more about it on my
Yes. Let
website, on
let
the
them
internet,
let
wherever
them
else.
let them
Yeah,
read it there. Okay, so
yeah.
tell me another thing I found super interesting was woodpeckers. How come woodpeckers don't get headaches? This is something you never think about. And apparently they're hitting their head against wood 12,000 times a day.
Yes, and at
Yeah,
extraordinary forces.
yeah,
Now, when we grow up, when we think of a woodpecker, we know it as this fine little bird that wraps their beak against wood all the time, and that's pretty much where we leave things. We know woodpeckers exist. We know trees exist. We know woodpeckers peck trees for whatever reason, but somebody went beyond that and wanted to look at it from the point of view of the woodpecker. if you were a woodpecker and you were bashing your beak and your head against a tree, how are you not constantly fainting or getting skull fractures or being completely disoriented all the time? And that led into people discovering that the shape of the skull, the insides of the woodpecker, have this weird natural force absorbing brake type of system. And once you get into the science of it, suddenly all these huge astounding terms come in. But the very fact that someone even thought about it and then sort of committed to the question enough to actually find an answer. And now it's an entire series of questions. More and more research has been done on the anatomy of the woodpecker's head and what exactly about it makes it capable of bashing your head 12,000 times against a hard wall at extraordinary forces. So incredible. And it represents the ethos of the Ig Nobel so well because the first response is, why would someone ask this question? How did they come up with it? And then why would you put all your time and resources into answering a question like this when you could be, for example, trying to cure cancer, right? Uh, Even the way the question is framed, why don't woodpecker get headaches, is brilliant. It's so much more interesting and fun than saying something like the anatomy of the woodpecker. No, it's more fun to say why don't woodpeckers get headaches?
Yeah, someone like me
And
picks it up for that. Yeah.
right, exactly.
Yeah.
And which is one of the best parts about the Ig Nobel Prizes. Many of the scientists and studies involved, they get this kind of attention in their lives, probably just in their careers, probably for this one reason. And that limelight draws attention to what they're studying, the university, the field of study, the type of questions, and that's got like this rollover effect. I'd like to believe sometimes the book also goes into how people have had to face negative consequences after winning an Ig Nobel, but largely most scientists are thrilled and excited to get the kind of attention their work gets after winning an Ig Nobel because their work is presented in such a silly singular sentence or phrase that regular people like us can't look away from.
Yeah, absolutely. We can't look away from it. That's very true. So
Right.
yeah. So another thing, which I found very interesting was this movie frames pixels in an E. coli DNA. I was like, I mean, what is this even? How can you put a movie of what? This was a galloping horse, right? It was a
Yes.
galloping horse,
Yes.
and in E. coli, and you can even
Yes.
reproduce it back again, right?
Right.
Frame by frame. So I'm
Yeah.
like, what is this even? When I read it, I was just flipping through your book initially, and I'm like, no, I have to go back and read this properly. And I was like, I should put it on Chat GPT and say, explain this to me
Yeah.
again.
Yeah.
But then I'm like, no, I'm talking to Sana, and I'm going
Yeah.
to ask you.
Yeah.
So tell me, and I know I don't think anybody wants to wait to pick up the book for this. So please explain what this is. This is fascinating.
I will start by saying that this idea that going to talk about right now has nothing to do with Ig Nobel Prizes, but what is
Yeah,
just
yeah,
an
absolutely, absolutely.
example,
Huh. Yeah.
of how weird and absurd science is
And
in its
scientists are,
fundamental
and
sense.
the stuff
And scientists
are
are,
up there,
right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Yeah, what sort of a person asks these questions? What sort of a person says, is it possible for me to try and use bacteria as a hard drive and store a movie file inside it and then recover it back in a way that it can be played? And then a question like, you know what? Let me try. I want to see what happens. I wonder what would happen. So people, you're absolutely right in that people are weird. Curious people are weirder, and most scientists are shockingly weird. So what they did with this E. coli business, and we'll try to keep it as simple as fun as possible,
Yes, yes.
is you must have heard of this term called CRISPR technology. It came in the
Yes,
news
yes. The gene editing
some time ago.
technology. Yeah.
Exactly, that's exactly it. This was one of the ways of testing this CRISPR technology and how accurately it can edit stuff and can be reverse editing if we want to. So what people did was Um, they picked up a tiny little movie of a galloping horse, and a movie is nothing but a series of still photographs that shift from one to the other very rapidly. So to us, if we see many pictures of a person walking and the legs are in different positions in successive photos, our brain would see it as a video of the person walking, right? So that's what videos are. Same with movies. They're just a bunch of stills. And what they did was look at each still and say, how can we turn this into a form that can be stored inside bacteria? Why did they want to do that? I mean, that's like we just talked about. People be insane, okay, for all kinds of reasons. You give somebody enough resources and money, they will follow their curiosity no matter what, especially scientists. So they took each frame of this movie of a galloping horse and turned it into numbers. What kind of numbers? Simple. The pixels in every position of this still photograph. What color of pixel is present, right? Like in RGB. And those numbers could then be converted into a type of information that's acceptable for bacteria. Now, bacteria, of course, don't read numbers. They don't. I don't know any personally. I'm not friends with any bacteria, but I can presume they are indifferent to movies and horses and pixels. But what they do have, and this is something we understand very well, particularly a bacterium called E. coli, which is found all over our guts, in water, pretty much everywhere, really, in different forms. This E. coli has DNA, and DNA is something we understand very well. So instead of asking this bacterium to watch a movie and remember it for us, what they did was turn the frames, like we talked about, turn the frames, the still photograph of the movie into numbers that represent the pixels, turn the numbers into genetic code. They turn the numbers into simple letters that actually form our DNA as well, and the equalized DNA. And they took that genetic code and, through the magic of molecular biology, inserted it into the bacterium with the equivalent of a tiny little syringe. Now, when you give this bacterium some DNA, it accepts the DNA and says, welcome, DNA, you can join my DNA now, and we'll all live happily together ever after. So that's what happened. And now this E. coli did what E. coli does, which is divide and reproduce and make many, 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 many copies of itself. One reason why E. coli is something so common in science is because it divides so quickly. In a matter of 10 to 15 to 20 minutes, you can see a population grow from like one or two individuals to millions and millions. And that's what we want. We want to be able to see what happens across many, many generations of E. coli. And we also want to be able to take a little bit of something and have the E. coli make a lot of it in a matter of very short. So E. coli is used to make huge amounts of proteins and things like that by starting off with very little. We take what we want, we convert it into the DNA form, give it to the E. coli. The E. coli, by its very nature, divides a lot and makes copies of whatever it has inside it, including our little secret instructions, our little code. And by the end, you have many E. coli individuals, all carrying a little bit of that little code. So we can now remove the code, and turns out we put in one copy of our code, and now we have millions of copies of the code. And that's exactly what these scientists were talking about did with the conversion of still photographs to pixels, to numbers, to DNA. They put the DNA that ultimately represents every still photograph into the E. coli. The E. coli reproduced. They removed the DNA back out of the E. coli and did the reverse conversion of the coding. They took the DNA back and converted the letters A, T, C, G that makes up all DNA into numbers, the numbers into pixels, that is the position and color of a pixel. And by assembling this, almost like a jigsaw puzzle, by assembling the pixels, you get a still photograph. And by doing it for all the still photographs that they initially coded for, you put the photographs back in order, and you've suddenly recovered the very movie that you've injected into the E. coli in the first place. Why would someone do this? No, not to use E. coli as a memory bank for our media, but to be able to confirm that this CRISPR technology actually can do something so well. It can take some information that is distinctly non biological, because a movie is the furthest thing from something natural, and turn it into biological information that even something as simple as bacterium can accept without much of a fuss. Keep the information with itself for as long as we want, and give the information back. So it's absolutely mind blowing that something um, so bizarre and so weird can be useful for medicine, can be useful for healthcare, can be useful for, in the future, maybe studying how maybe bacteria possibly could be used to store all kinds of massive amounts of information or copy it or whatever. The possibilities are endless. But fundamentally, why did they do this? Because they were interested, of course, but also they wanted to make sure that they had a clear case of CRISPR technology working with something complicated. And I'm not entirely sure why they would choose a film, but it could just as easily have been a song. It could be a voice recording. It could be anything. But thankfully for us, it all worked great. And CRISPR technology, with which won a Nobel Prize, is now going to probably save many lives in the future. All thanks to a little eco life that said okay to us injecting a film of a galloping horse into it.
Yeah, and imagine for movie piracy, like you mentioned it also, they can just
Yeah.
inject the films into E. coli and have
Can
millions
you
of copies.
imagine? How would you stop that?
Yeah,
Tell me how you would legislate this movie piracy in bacteria. I
yeah,
don't
in
know.
bacteria, yeah. And the thing is
Yeah.
that if you reverse the process, which I still, I really can't believe that that's possible. You reverse the
Mm,
process, you can actually play the movie back.
exactly. So if I had to pass you a movie, now I would have to upload it to Drive or something, or maybe come over and hand you a USB or give you my Netflix password.
Yeah.
But imagine if I could just sort of give you one bacterium and say, here you go, give it some food and water. Soon you'll have 25 copies of the movie. Like, then you can distribute it to the rest of the world. That's crazy.
Yeah, it's
That's
just crazy.
absolutely crazy.
It's
Science is
fantastic.
crazy.
What if there's a banned book or a banned movie and people just do this and it spreads everywhere? I mean, it's yeah,
Brilliant. That's a brilliant
brilliant.
idea.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I'm not sure people should be listening to this or not
No,
and get
people should be
ideas.
listening. Everyone listen. Everyone have a tiny little microbiology lab at home and learn how to do this quickly.
Learn how to do this. Yes, yes. Start
Yeah.
injecting movies and books and films and songs and everything. So we'll have some very creative E. coli.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so fantastic. This is what I'm saying. I just loved your book because I'm like, I'm mind blown, I'm like, what's going on? Yeah. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
like the stuff exists. And who knows? And see, this is something you've written about, but who knows what else they're experimenting with? Maybe I think
Yes.
your book needs sequels. And I think each chapter probably needs another book. So,
You know what? I would actually agree because each chapter goes into like interviewing different kinds of scientists and very interesting people with very interesting stories. I've tried my best to condense it into a chapter, but really, if you think about it, you can pick any scientist across the world and write entire novels about their lives and about their interests. Because no matter, even if you're not working with movies and E. coli, whatever you're working with is truly bizarre once you actually look at it and pull the curtains back a little bit and look at the fundamental questions they're asking and what sort of insane curiosity is driving them to make careers out of answering these questions. So,
yeah,
well,
actually, now
fingers
that
crossed that many books.
yeah, yeah. No, and now that you mention it, actually, with the way you structure the chapters, it tells you about the scientist itself. It's not just the what they've done, and it's not a dry, retelling of this happened. Like, you've
Yeah,
written about Chittaranjan Andrade and, the person I forget, Shri Kumar, Shri Nivas. Sorry, I'm forgetting the exact
KP
name.
Kumar.
Yeah,
Yes,
Shri Kumar,
KP
right? So I got
Kumar.
that right.
Yeah.
Yeah, who measured the surface area of an elephant. And
Yeah.
yeah, and it delayed his thesis because he wanted to get done with
Yeah.
his doctorate. And he was like, oh, damn, I have to go back and do this now.
Yeah.
So, you made it so colorful. And even Chitrajan Andrade, like he goes mountaineering and, things like that.
Does
Yeah,
magic tricks,
yeah.
plays music.
Hmm.
Even while the rest of us were in the pandemic lockdown, he was running up and down mountain peaks.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
yeah,
Because there was no other challenge, right? So you have to run.
yes, that's exactly what he said.
Yeah,
When there's a mountain peak that's not technically challenging, how do you make it harder? You run up and down instead of
yeah,
walking
yeah,
or
yeah,
climbing. Yeah.
absolutely. So he's from NIMHANS, right? Bangalore.
He is from NIMHANS, Bangalore, and I live in Bangalore as well. So I had
Okay.
the privilege of meeting him in person and doing the interview in person.
Okay. So
And
tell us
he
a
is
little
another
about
person whom
his,
I bothered.
yeah, tell us a little bit about his Ig Nobel. And I'm just reading out from your book, the kind of you've written, the many gems in his bibliography. You've mentioned a few. Learning from history, how to swallow a pill, how to read a research paper, is sitting harmful to health, odd odds, right? And age is a number, not a group. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly. Now,
yeah.
this person we're talking about, Chittaranjan Andrade, is a researcher and a psychiatrist at NIMHANS, and he was, if I'm not mistaken, the first Indian to win an Ig Nobel Prize. And this man is hilarious. I have to tell you, he is such a contrast from the building he sits and works in. Now, I believe he's retired, but we'll speak as if he's still there. The the NIMHANS building is quite imposing. It's old, it's echoey, it's very brown and beige. It's boring in a way. And then you enter one of the offices that is equally unremarkable. And there sits this man with glasses and a magnificent beard, who at first glance doesn't look like someone who does a lot of mountaineering and magic and music, and is hilarious. But the second you ask him about his work, and the second you bring up some of the articles he's written and some of his humor, you suddenly realize that there is a cosmos inside this person's mind. And if only you should be so lucky to learn just a fragment of what it's like to think like him, to be like him. His humor uh, oozes through every single boring psychiatric paper he writes. Some of the titles you read out, and I love them so much that I absolutely want to highlight them again. Um, they show a little bit of his personality. Now the titles of his studies have little to do with the seriousness of the studies, but again, it's like asking why don't woodpecker get headaches. That one uh, overarching title captures you, and you want to learn more about it. So, and as examples of him being hilarious, I listed out some of the titles of his work in the very first interview chapter, starting with learning from history, how to swallow a pill. I mean, how great is that? How to read research paper, ecological validity, apples and oranges. Is sitting harmful to health? Is it too early to say? These read to me like tabloid news questions that you would see going a little bit viral, because the headline is so absurd, you would want to click on that little call to action and then browse through all of the ads and eventually get to the meat of it. Another question from Chittaranjan Andrade is why some psychiatrists may be unwilling to receive electroconvulsive therapy. We don't really think about that, do we? We don't really think about psychiatrists receiving psychiatry or what their personal feelings are about psychiatric treatments. And then we also have something called age is a number, not a group. Of course, age is a number. That's not too surprising to us. But in medicine, a lot of the time, um, the people that a lot of treatments and drugs are validated on, tested on, you describe them not by their names or their hobbies, but by their biological characteristics, how old they are, what is their weight, do they have any pre-existing conditions. So in this one article called Age is a Number, Not a Group, Dr. Andrade went into the intricacies of um, looking at looking at the ages of the people that we are deciding to offer a treatment or not. Very serious subject, but the title is irresistible. And he does a lot of writing. He's written plenty of articles on his own mountaineering work. He's written commentaries both about medicine and medicine adjacent subjects that are very relevant to society. He has done stage magic shows, and he's certainly given wonderful little lectures on mountaineering and to other fellow mountaineers. And you'd be surprised at how many hardcore mountaineers there are in science. In the Indian Institute of Science and in IITs, in NCBS, there are all these really interesting people who have these unexpected hobbies, and Dr. Chittaranjan Andrade is just one of them.
Yeah, I can see that you're a fan, and I became a fan reading about him. So, did he get a Ig Nobel? I'm just curious, for something in particular?
Yes, he did. He won an Ig Nobel Prize, I believe, in wait, I forget the year. This is terrible. I should know this, but
That's
he
all
won an
right.
Ig
Yeah.
Nobel.
Huh. I'm sure
He
people
won an Ig
can
Nobel Prize.
read it. Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. It's very
Yeah.
easy to. I do remember the Ig Nobel Prize was founded in 1991. That much I remember. But he won an Ig Nobel Prize for researching nose picking in
Oh,
adolescent children.
okay. Yeah.
And the question was, do adolescents pick their noses? And if yes, how much, how often, etc. And this is the study that brought his work into the limelight. And he's still known today as somebody as one of the first Indian winners of the Ig Nobel Prizes, which is why I got to meet him, interview him. And the book, I don't want to give away too much, but his
Yeah.
chapter goes into the details of why he asked that question, what they found out, and also a little trick he used in trying to separate the jokesters from the adolescents who actually were honest about their nose picking habits. So he introduced a trick question into a survey where it would then allow him to figure out how many of these adolescents that I am studying and researching and surveying are joking around about this whole thing and I shouldn't take their answers seriously, and how many are being completely honest and giving me useful information. So those are the kind of struggles you wouldn't think that a psychiatrist has to deal with. Kids lying about nose picking and eating what they pick out. But it's a practical concern he had to find a creative solution to, and he did.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember that now. You've even put an exercise at the end of the chapter of what we should do
Oh,
after
I
reading
did. Yeah.
that. Yeah. So, the thing, I think the motto for the Ig Nobel Prizes is that something that makes you laugh and then it makes you think, right? That's
Yes,
what it is.
yes,
And so
exactly.
all these things that you've mentioned and we're talking about, they all, like the E. coli bit, it's talking about CRISPR technology. And so many things, they have larger ramifications and they actually, furthering the cause of science, so to speak. So, right down to, I think Mahadevan, right, about the crumpled bed sheets. I
Yes.
mean, you can explain that better. And that also, it's following the laws of physics. And then, I was fascinated, it also gets into wrinkles, how we develop wrinkles and things like that. So, crumpled bed sheets and wrinkles. I mean, how would you even think of that?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Now, this professor L. Mahadevan we're talking about, he was interested in, I'm just going to call them folds occurring in nature. So that would be things like skin folds or wrinkles appearing with age, or the little ups and downs, the waves you would see on a flower petal that naturally occur, or the folds of the top and bottom of an apple, the curves, right, where they meet. The folds you would see on the edges of a long leaf of seaweed, the folds you would see, we've already talked about but skin, but specifically the wrinkles you see appearing at specific body parts with increasing age. Um, we would never, as just a regular person going about their day, paying their bills, never put all of these into the same category. We wouldn't even think, right, to look at the common occurring theme of wrinkles in nature. But again, this scientist and his students and his mentors and his team not only looked into that, but they went deep into the mathematics and the physics of these folds, asking questions like, is there a way we can mathematically define the shape of these folds? Or if the folds progress from, say, a very unripe apple to a super ripe apple, is there a way we can, is there a pattern that it's following? And is there a pattern to wrinkles in sheets of fabric, in sheets of plastic, in sheets of materials that are very important to manufacturing and industry and medicine? Um, and as a sort of echo of this approach, there are other studies that have won Ig Nobel Prizes that looked into knots, the knotting of hair when you leave it unkempt, or what happens to hair, the physics of hair in a ponytail, or why strings get jumbled up on their own magically. For example, if you leave wired earbuds alone for some time and you've laid them out perfectly, you left the room for 5 minutes, you've come back, inevitably you'll find that they've knotted themselves up into some ungodly abomination. And turns out it's just the nature of strings to do that. All of this helped me realize that I can be less frustrated about my hair knotting, or about a lot of hair getting caught up in your hair ties when that happens. It's really, really annoying. But there's physics in it now, and I'm less annoyed by it. I'm more accepting of the fact that wrinkles and folds and knots are all a part of nature, and there's nothing I'm doing wrong with my hair. I don't need to use more conditioner. The funny thing is that when Dr. Mahadevan looks at things like the folds of a petal, the naturally occurring folds and waves on the edges of a petal, he is able to zoom right into what's happening at that scale, and then also do a study that is looking at a similar thing at a completely different scale. Like human skin is very different from petals. Fabric is very different from petals. But the ability to be able to reduce things down to the physics of their movement is I think it's quite unusual. It's quite special, and maybe only those who studied physics and maths are able to look at the world through the lens of equations and patterns and graphs and curves. But it makes me think that this is just another human being like us. How is his brain and his mind wired so differently to mine? How is he able to appreciate this stuff, and what can I do different to also appreciate it, even if I'm not very good at the physics and the maths of it? So I have an entire chapter called on a lazy Sunday morning, which goes into the everyday complex magic that you would see in your own household, from when you wake up to when you get yourself some breakfast and go back to bed to nap again. Just that period is inundated with so many wonderful scientific discoveries, but also many Ig Nobel Prize winning studies, including one that looks at the sogginess of cereal or the crunchiness of cereal, and one that looks at uh, when one that looks at coffee spilling out of a cup when you're walking holding it, right? And the banana peel on the cover makes an appearance in this very chapter. So the everyday science of life, that's where a lot of award winning, that's where a lot of niche, interesting, very, very technical, very ambitious, high reaching questions exist. And it blew me away, I'll be honest. Even though I was the one who wrote the chapter, I was a changed person before and after.
Yeah, it's blowing me away right now listening to you. Yeah. Really. So tell me, Upasana, there's a lot in the book, but I suspect there's a lot more that you couldn't put in, right?
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. So tell
yeah.
us a little
Oh,
about what didn't go into the book,
oh my gosh.
if you
Actually, I
can.
would,
Yeah.
yeah,
Hmm.
of course. Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, this was really difficult because a book can't be infinitely long. You have to remove some elements, and it's hard to know what to remove because when I was coming from a place of when writing this book, irreverence and humor, but also a very genuine love for these ideas and these people and their minds. So it was hard for me to rank them into tiers about what is most appropriate in the book, what should be left out, which is where the editor, Karthik Venkatesh of Penguin Random House India, helped a great deal. Most of the things that had to be cut out, which really hurt my heart, were more details of the personal stories of the scientists. So we tried to put in as much of the interesting things as possible. But there was so much more that was not just about their science careers, but about their life in general, what life at home was like, what sort of relationship did they have with their parents, what was the contribution of their home environment in their career. And many of the Indian scientists I've interviewed were sharing their stories publicly for the very first time. So I could not let the chance go when I was interviewing them of extracting as much as possible. I was like a drunk, addicted person. There was nothing I did not want to know about their lives. And thankfully, many of them were very open with their stories. They, they, they seem to have, on the one hand, you would have someone who was an Infosys Prize winner like Dr. Manjula Reddy, but then when you speak with her, she's just another person. She's just another Indian who had to face the same prejudices and challenges that all of us still do in India, especially as women. And her home life during adolescence and early adulthood was not that different from what the rest of us have lived through. So, and yet she managed to forge this career following a passion, studying ecoli of all things, um, against all odds. And in her generation, the odds were much harsher. So there was this really weird feeling for me about where on the one hand I was relating to these people and their stories, and on the other hand, distantly admiring them because I've put them up on a pedestal and I want to hear all about their brilliance in this and their approach to research. So it was a really strange but a rich and rewarding place to be. Many of those details of their daily existence didn't quite make it into the book, but I'll probably just save them for myself as a special takeaway from this whole experience. And yeah, the other thing I didn't get to talk too much about. I have a cat. I love cats. I love all animals. There are some studies that I've limited to casual mentions in footnotes or in the text. I didn't go into huge detail because I knew if I started, the entire book would end up becoming about that subject. So I had a very restrained touch. I would love to at some point in the future write only about those. But yeah, it's the personal stories I think that really really moved and inspired me, just as an individual, not even as a writer.
Yeah, I know, I can imagine. And your footnotes, you mentioned, your footnotes are very interesting. They can make for another book. Yeah, the footnotes are really interesting. I was just reading them. Okay, maybe it's just some reference books or reference note, but they're really, really
Yeah,
interesting.
yeah.
And they go
Oh
on
man,
to the next
I
stage.
love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love it when a book has these little sprinkles of a little mischief. And typically, footnotes, exactly like you said, are just additional information or context about what is being discussed, a
Yeah.
reference or a source, or just. But I've used footnotes as a way of jumping into tangential thoughts in a sort of a wild, untamed way, and very close to how I think. So if you read the book, you would sort of really get to know how I think and how I approach things and how unfocused I am. Pretty much better than the people who've known me the longest. So I've used footnotes to capture all of the little additional thoughts that come while you're trying to stick to the plan. And I also use the footnotes to tease our readers into falling in love with the Ig Nobel Prizes, just as I have.
Yeah,
And also, of course, poke fun. Yeah.
yeah. No, no, tell me, focus on
Oh, and poke fun.
and
That
poke
I
fun.
add a
Yeah,
lot
yeah,
of,
yeah.
yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a fun book. It's really fun. And another interesting fact that I came across that we shed what 1.5 grams of skin every day, which is good for dust mites.
So yeah,
Yeah.
this was I think, okay, I would say this is discovering what that dust is, largely skin that we shed, was, I think, a turning point in my life, because it really made me look at my existence differently. Until that point, I think I found out when I was a teenager or something, but until that point, dust was just dust. It was something that you had to sweep away or wipe away with a wet cloth, and that's it. But then I found out that a huge portion of our household dust is the skin we shed, which was challenging for me to stomach. But then you go a little forward, and there's living beings called dust mites that feed on it. Dust is the home and the buffet for so many microorganisms. And our own skin and our own hair, including eyebrows, is no different. We have mites living in our eyebrows, and they're eating the little oils we secrete. They're eating a little bit of the skin we shed in our eyebrows. They're reproducing, having families, going to college and graduating, dying, and pursuing hobbies all inside our eyebrows. And we had no idea this whole time. But now that I was infected by this terrible knowledge, I've I hope, and now infected you with the knowledge. I hope
Yeah,
to
I didn't know
infect
I
all
was
of India with the
providing
knowledge.
food, for dust
Oh
mites.
yeah,
Yeah.
oh yeah. No, that's the thing. The second you go into the kind of microbiology community of your body, you will never feel alone, ever. And also, you will never feel useless, because you think, oh, what am I doing with my life? I've not done anything. I'm not rich. I'm not famous. I've not, bought a bungalow. You have helped millions of generations of bacteria and insects survive by the very fact of your existence. You've fed them, you've cared for them, you've given them a home. Roti kapda makan, you've been that for a lot of microorganisms. So you are always useful and always a success.
Yeah. My life has purpose. My eyebrows have purpose, right? Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wonderful talking to you, Pasna. I hope you write more books. I hope, I was just thinking, I
Ah,
wish you would do a podcast on this. All these scientists you've interviewed and, their
right.
personal stories, that would be great to listen
Great
to. Just
idea.
like, Marc Abrahams. I think you should have one of your own.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Why not?
yeah, yeah. So tell me what's next for you. You're a science writer, right? So tell me a little bit about that and, what's next.
I'm still in the process of, trying to get word of the book out there, but in a few weeks, I'm actually going to start working at an organization called the National Center for Biological Sciences, NCBS in Bangalore, as a research fellow at their archives. So I'm going to be spending a minimum of 3 months in their library, looking up in the library and archives, looking up some very interesting information that is going to go into my next book.
That's great. I'm sure
So
you'll
that
find some mischief and fun there.
I'm sure I'm very excited by these archives. The weird thing is I lived in Bangalore for so long, and it's the first time I'm going to visit the archives at NCPS. And I'm sure that's true for a lot of us, right? We have all these great resources and institutions and museums and libraries in our cities, and we don't really make much use of them. So I'm very excited by the opportunity to spend time at the archives. I am planning to write a lot. I have so many ideas, especially after this first one. You do realize that there's so much more out there that needs to be shared. I have a lot of ideas for books. Now it's just about making them happen and trying to make a reasonable living at the same time. So I will keep you posted about what happens next.
Yeah, all the best, Upasana. Thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you so much for speaking with me. It was wonderful. And I'm so happy you enjoyed the work.
Yeah, totally I did. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.